peace. Welcome to Stopping the Violence. We are a collaboration of groups and ministries that have one goal in mind, and that is stopping the violence, certainly in the US, but all over the United States. We have had former speakers that have been very informational, very successful in their line of work and what they've been doing, and we're absolutely grateful for those that have been on. I'm your host today in absence of our dear brother, Reverend Zachary Oliver. And without further ado, we'll move forward. Let me say this: we are. I feel as though we're under spiritual attack because there's so much happening from city to city, state to state, all around the world in reference to violence. If there's absolutely nothing else we can do, we can offer prayer for those families. And a lot of times we think about offering prayer for the family of those that have been hurt um, or killed, lost lives. However, there's also pain and suffering on the other side as far as the perpetrator and their family members. So let's just be mindful to keep everyone and everybody uplifted in prayer as we move forward. Today is 9/11, and as we know, the catastrophe that happened on 9/11, we want to keep those families in mind in our prayer as well. So welcome. As we look at the video, because it is a past program, as we look at the video, have your questions or comments in mind, that at the end we can have a dialogue. Nadia?
YouTube. We want to greet you and welcome you to our fourth, I believe it's our fourth webinar titled Stopping the Violence, Crime and Violence in America. Today we have a special presenter, a special guest. As you know, throughout the course of these four seminars, our goal is to listen and to learn from different angles of presenters who are concerned and who have worked in the field and in the trenches in the areas of how do we bring the resolve, minimize prevention, all various avenues that we can come, stopping the violence, curbing the violence, and also the crime in America. As you know, a large part of the crimes are committed by guns. But we are learning every day, it's not only the guns, but there are other factions and root causes that cause people to be inhumane to one another through crime and violence. We have a very special guest, Anthony Millay, who is originally from New York, which is actually, we were just discussing, we can go in more sometime, Anthony, my hometown, where I also grew up, New York City. And he is the president and senior consultant of AMI Global Security, LLC, which is an international security consultant. He deals with firearms, but he also, most importantly, he deals with firearms licensing. They have to go through to him to license. But why we have him on is that he's coming with a very unique perspective. And how do we prevent the atrocities of people being trapped in a situation and not being able to get out and ultimately being senselessly murdered? As we saw in Uvalde and other places, we see these kids and people, or especially our children, are being senselessly murdered. And his perspective is based on, let's reevaluate our federal system when we are confronted, when schools or places, big places of business are confronted with these mass shootings. Let's what should we do? What else can we do to minimize the atrocities of those who become victims of being murdered? And one of his angles is what he calls run, hide, or fight back.
Fight back.
Fight back. So I love what he says. He's going to say it. He says, when you look at children, it is true. When kids get scared, they can run about 100 miles an hour. They can do a sprint. And that sprint in itself is hard to shoot. And it could be a hard to hit target. But anyway, we'll let him explain. I would like to also to ask Dr. Jenkins to come on to give just a little bit more of an explanation and introduction to this wonderful brother Anthony Malay, that we have been discussing with, and he's really inspiring. Welcome, Dr. Jenkins.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Oliver. I'm very happy to support this program. We are very serious about ending the violence and also dealing with this tragedy that's continually going on against children in schools, against police officers, law enforcement, against common citizens. We want to stop the violence, and we've got to do different things to be able to do that. We met Mr. Anthony Malay when we were doing a special program on honoring the 65th Regiment of the U.S. Army that was in Korea with General MacArthur, and they're the Puerto Rican regiment. They were one of the most highly decorated regiments, and also uniquely received the Medal of Honor from the U.S. Congress. Very, very few medals like that have been given to regiments. So Anthony came, and we met him in the Bronx, where the Puerto Rican regiment has a special national headquarters. He's the executive director of that regiment. And then we also found, as we got to know him, he's an expert in security. He's an expert on also peace and bringing solutions to the community. We were talking earlier today about how he engineered for Washington and New York the ability to break up drug sales on the streets, very much working with the community. And this is why we really want to understand more deeply the problem, just not what the headlines in the news talk about. And we're not pointing fingers, we're not blaming anybody. But Anthony sent me the other day his study he has done on this problem with schools from years ago, and it's more current than ever right now. So we're excited to receive that presentation. Anthony is a federal firearms licensee. That means he's the man that just does the background checks, and he's not against background checks, but he also is not easily one that approves anybody. He feels that if he meets people that really are not qualified, or they have other issues that may not show up on their background check, he will not permit them to be a firearm owner. But he's showing us today a different way of looking at how to stop the violence in the schools, and that can be stopped, and it must be stopped. And therefore, I'm just very honored to present the president of AMI Security and a dear friend of Maria Vargas, who was helping us lead the Peace Road activities across America. So welcome to Mr. Anthony Malay.
If you hate wearing bras, you should try me instead. I'm the Under Outfit Wireless Bra.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you, Reverend Oliver. I mean, after an introduction like that, I'm waiting for that guy to show up. I want to hear from him also. But thank you very much, and welcome to everyone out there. I don't know who's out there in the audience, but I know that I will structure this where I'll give a little bit of a lecture, a little bit of a background, and then with the permission of Reverend Oliver and Dr. Jenkins, we'll open it up to any kind of questions and answers, or any questions you may have, you can pose, because everyone has a unique perspective. So this is about perspectives, right? This is about looking it through different lenses, right? So there's the attacker, right, and the victim, right? We understand things through the view of and the optics of the victim, but then we also have to try and understand it, if we're going to combat it, from the perspective and the viewpoint and the optics of the attacker, right? So what's the difference between, wolves and sheep, right? Dinner time. So this is the kind of perspective, that we need to look at it. And I think part of the topic that we were open to discuss today is the school lockdown policy. School lockdown policy. My colleagues and I had a roundtable review of this policy back in 2013, in the wake of some of the attacks that you all well know of, and we came up with an exercise that will help save lives. The goal of it is to help save lives, is to survive. And so at the end of our conclusion, at the end of our study, came up with the 3 words: run, hide, fight. These are the 3 options that are left to you when presented, when it's in a dangerous situation or situation under attack. So within the framework of a school attack, right? There's 2 types of attackers that do this kind of things. One is the psychopath, sociopath, right? Who has no empathy, no value for life, and whatever delusion is going on in their mind while they're doing it, that's for another study. The point is that individual is armed and he's inside the facility and he's there to do harm. The second type of character or personality profile that would do such a thing are the professional, which would be the terrorist, the hostage taker, all right, that belong to some type of cult, right? And in that cult, in whatever their belief systems are, they believe by taking hostages or creating a terrorist situation, right, will affect government policy or hold hostages and trade for prisoners, held in some facility, and they will want to do a trade. So these are the 2 types of attackers that we're looking at, and we have to prepare for both, but the preparation for both is not the same. It's not a one size fits all. So when the policy comes about, and again, we're not pointing fingers, we're only looking at it from a objective point of view. So from this moment on, let's look at it from the perspective of one of those 2 type attackers. Now, the social psychopath, when he wakes up every morning when they wake up, there's a decision process of today is the day that they're going to snap. Today is the day that they're going to go ahead and do whatever it is that they've been imagining, whatever demons have been whispering in their ear, whatever evil is percolating in them, whatever is motivating them, that morning, they're going to do it. So if they didn't do it today, it's because they decided not to, okay? But the day that they do, they know the process now, right? Because they've been thinking about it, right? They've been researching it, right? So they know that if they walk into a facility and they say boo or bang or anything else like this, they know that each of the school facilities have been trained to go into what's been called lockdown, which means that all the doors will be locked, the children will be locked inside the classroom, right? And the administrators will cooperate with them. So whatever you want, we'll do it. What do you want? And as you know, the social psychopath type is just there for murder and mayhem, and they kill everybody in sight. Now, what we found out is that from the first time the first shot is fired and a 911 call goes out to the time that it takes for emergency services units and police to arrive, observe, organize, and take action, let's say we give it about 10 minutes. Okay, being, distances and such, but an average. So let's give it 10 minutes. For some faster, some later. 10 minutes. 10 minutes is composed of 600 seconds. 600 seconds is 1 second is all it takes to pull a trigger. So think about this from the time that it takes from the first call to out for help to arrive. That psychopath is running up and down the hallways, all right, or throughout the facility, unopposed, unchecked, right? And this kid in Uvalde had 1,700 rounds. He has 1,750 rounds. Right? So bang, 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 and such, right? And he's going through the place murdering people. Now, everybody in the place has been trained and conditioned to sit in place, to stay there. Now, we're not blaming fault. I'm just saying what the policy has been and what their training, how their brain was trained the brain. So they're told, oh, geez.
Like a lot of us, I used to get confidence from external validation. Now I only dress for.
I'm sorry. So they're told to stand down, stay in place. In the meantime, the perpetrator, right, has access, however he got access, but he's out there murdering people. Now, you're talking about a building that's filled with at least 500, 600, some 800 people. And all of them have degrees. And they're all hearing shots being fired. And they're hearing children screaming, mommy, daddy, help me, help me. And they still, for whatever reason, are staying in place and not trying and resisting the natural urge and the natural instinct of self-preservation and to flee. So as I say, even when duck hunters shoot at a gaggle of ducks fly in every direction, they scatter. And the duck hunter is trying to get one, right? How much more smarter are we than ducks? Ducks don't gather up below a bush and hide and say, be quiet. They scatter and go. So the thing is that what we realized that for survival within that window of opportunity, it is best that everyone be trained to escape and evade. So each facility must look at their particular situation and be trained through the perspective of the bad guy. What would the bad guy do if he was here? What would the bad guy do if he encountered a locked door? What would you do if he turned around and took one child and held something to his neck, said, open the door? Says, oh, you don't want to open the door? And he had a gas can and spread gasoline and lit it up. Okay, or basically shoot through the place. So you see, you're creating a hostage situation. Now, I don't even want to get into what happens in the terrorist who wants a hostage situation. Okay, that's for another discussion. I'm going to focus discussion on the sociopath, psychopath. So when that psychopath is running through the place, why in the world would you stay with the danger? If there was a structural fire, you would flee the fire. So now you've got a fire just as dangerous embodied in a sociopath coming to you. Why would you stand there, sit there and wait for him? So this policy has conditioned teachers and other guardians to stay in place. And the sociopath might be mentally ill, but they're not stupid. So they know how to get around the policy or to exploit the policy to their advantage. Even in this thing in Uvalde, we understand. Ramos went in the classrooms where the children were hiding, because he knew they were in the hiding mode. And he says, any children in here need help? Anybody needs help? Come on, I'm here to help you. And they came out of hiding. And when they did, he murdered them. So he used the policy and the innocence and the panic of children to his advantage. So we really need to take another look and review of this lockdown policy and how to retrain our staff, administrators, and others and children within the school, how to exploit that first window to escape and evade. Now, as Reverend Oliver was saying in our earlier discussion, a healthy child can run the 100-yard dash in an average of 10 seconds. Did you know that? Now, I'm old and slow. I need a car to go 100 yards, okay? But a kid can travel on his two legs 10 seconds. Another kid, maybe 20 seconds. Another kid, 30 seconds. The point is that within a fraction of a minute.
Super soft bras made for seniors by a 70-year-old woman. Soft wide straps. Easy front button allow.
Children can put a lot of distance between them and the danger. 100 yards. Now, if you're a parent of one of these children, God forbid, in that situation, where would you want them to be? Would you want them to be there in the danger, or would you want them as far away from the danger as possible? So why in the world would you lock them in with the danger when you can train and drill for a means of escape? Kids are smart, okay? Kids are smart, and figure out a way to train the brain and condition each one in the whole place to exploit the situation, assess the situation as it is, but try and get away. So the building's a big place. So if something is occurring on the north side of the building, why would you lock everybody down in the south side? So if you broke up the place, for instance, by zones and make a code by color, so code red, code blue, code white, and you drill, if they hear, if there's the ability to have something on over the address system, the public address system, all right, and kids hears code blue in section, in section 1, then they know to get the heck out of there. If they know that the action is happening in that, then it's code red, section 2, they know that the shooter is there, and you're gonna have to hide or figure out a fight plan. The adults who are there figure out a fight plan because he's here. He's coming to get you. He's going to hurt you, right? So there's other things that we can do to help with a fight plan. In the meantime, help is on the way, right? So the thing is that how you can use that window, exploit it to get as far away as possible. And I'll stop there if there's any questions you want to go back and forth about that, Reverend Oliver.
Yeah, well, thank you. I know you have so much to say. We're really grateful for what you just said. And it's interesting, and we will open up with discussion. I mentioned your plan to my wife, who is also a school teacher, and she told me that she is trained that way. But she said it in a way that she didn't agree with it as well. Because as the kids are sitting huddled, they're sitting ducks, and it's painful to think that they have to sit there and be subjected to such atrocity, So, I mean, and I think the Reverend Jenkins asked one question, because when I was reading your report and I kept looking at the date, you wrote that in 2013, and we're in 2022. And I thought it made sense in some respects. And Reverend Jenkins had asked you a question. He'd ask you, then why has the federal government still adopt this plan when there might be some other options to prevent such atrocities and saving lives of our young people and others? Could you tell us what and why the federal government or those policies are still in place and they're not reviewing them, other options?
Yeah, sure. I can theorize, and I don't want to cast blame or liability on anyone, but liability is probably one of the driving issues. Also is that it comes down to the training. Of course, they're going to say run, hide, fight. Of course, try to get away. They're going to say that. But when you hear the verbiage, right, that, okay, if the emergency happens, we're going to lock down, that also registers in the brain of the people in the place. And so they're just conditioned to hear lockdown, and that's what they do. And they think that that's the be all and end all solution, and it's not. Now you're in a tactical situation, okay? It's not a static situation, not something where nothing's happening, right? It's tactical. Things are going on, right? There's one attacker, two attackers, maybe more. Maybe in that time he's putting bombs in the place. Maybe he's wiring the place. Maybe he's ready to set fire to the place. All right. Now, at all this time, you're giving him the tactical advantage. So there might be protocols in place. They're going to say, well, the protocols is that we do this, and we do this. That's the protocol. Protocols are fine. Protocols are natural. Protocols are a guideline. But a protocol is not a substitute for sound judgment, good planning, and action. Okay? Or surrendering the tactical advantage. If you have if the opportunity arises to escape the danger, you don't say, well, the protocol says I should stay, but the situation on the ground gives you the opportunity to get out. And how many sat there, even when we think about Newtown? Can you imagine? The classrooms were side by side. The teachers were in each of the room with the doors locked with the children in it. Next door, he was shooting each one of those children, and I hate to be graphic about it, each one of those children while they're screaming, "Mommy, Daddy, help me, help me." And how could you sit there and hear that and still not be frozen, not run, not try and get you and those kids out of there, flee to danger? So something must have happened to purge the natural instinct of flight, the natural instinct of self-preservation when you're even in earshot. Not to mention the people who were on other sides of the building and upstairs, knowing what was going on and still opted to stay. So something was purged out of them in this training. And so this has to be unlearned. Now, as far as what the policymakers are going to say, they're going to say, well, no, we never told anybody to stay there. We told them, do this. That's what they're going to say. But the studies and the results, and we see what happened each time, tells us something different. So I propose that each one of it's going to have to come from the parents, and the parents are going to have to turn around and demand this kind of action needs to be done. And I'm sure that many teachers want to also participate, but the unions are telling them different things. They're being threatened with their job, their livelihood. Insurance people are saying, well, if you say that, then you're going to be sued. So there's liability issues. The police are saying, no, don't do that because, we're the cops and we know better and we'll do whatever, keep everything under control and contained. When everybody knows that in pandemonium and chaos, there is no control and containment. It's a free for all.
So when you say liability, is that what you meant about the area of liability?
Yeah, we can surmise that there's a conversation happening at the highest levels of administrators saying, well, what's our liability? If we tell them to do this and they end up with that open us up to legal suit or legal liability. So, and how much of that is influencing this type of policy? See? So unless the pressure comes from where it should come from, meaning the parents telling the leadership and administrations what is expected to be done. Because in the study we showed when the terrorists in Beslan took the school in Beslan, they counted on parents reacting. That was part of their plan. So while parents were dropping the kids off, then they heard on the radio and they heard through other phone calls that the place was taken by this terrorist group and they were wired up. Parents made U-turns. There were dads showing up in their boxer shorts and flip-flops, jumping out the showers with their hunting rifles and their hunting shotguns. And then they had to were in confrontation with the police who were on the scene. So they caused conflict and almost deadly conflict between the police and the civilians because the parents would run through fire to get their kids out.
Yes, yes.
So the terrorist planners plan on that. And as you see, that's what exactly occurred in Uvalde. If we just take that as a study, the police were outside for 90 minutes.
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
90 minutes.
Which is just
ludicrous.
Inexplicable. There's nothing. Yeah. I got nothing. My God, we got nothing for that. I can't.
So Reverend Jenkins, did you have something that you like to add?
Yes, this is so important, Anthony and Dr. Oliver. The Wall Street Journal had an article or op-ed by Peggy Noonan, very respected writer, that said Uvalde was the biggest law enforcement breakdown in the history of America. And I tend to agree. And what I'm hearing from you today, Anthony, liability, yes, if the schools tell the children to run and the children get shot running, which is highly, more difficult than going into a schoolroom to shoot everybody that's hiding there. But, the schools are worried about liability. There are a lot of issues, but the most important thing you brought out just now was the whole idea that this policy is making people vulnerable, completely vulnerable, and that there was, an hour and a half. So And you also mentioned about the protocols and the standard procedures of police. That's what they say messed up Uvalde. They were waiting, following protocols that didn't fit the situation. Can you fill us in on that a little more, Anthony, about Uvalde directly? Why were they waiting? Why were they waiting an hour and a half?
So,
And like you mentioned to us the other day, there were windows on that one-story school that children could have been getting out.
Out the windows,
Go ahead.
absolutely.
yeah, I'm not in a position to do a critique. I don't have, there's not enough info in intel to study it, but I can give you a general overview. So what I did was I Google Earth the Robb Elementary School, got an aerial view of it, 3D view of it, and noticed that it's a low-lying building. So it's not a multi-story building. Also, it's expansive. It's not a condensed place. It's really large, couple of buildings in this facility. Also, there's other questions that need to be asked. See, the right questions need to be asked. And Uvalde Ramos is 18 years old, seemed to be a bit troubled, okay? Obviously underneath the influence of something other than oxygen. And he obtained the firearms that were reported that he had were two very expensive firearms. One cost about $2,700. The other one's about $1,900. He had 1,750 rounds. Rounds for those kind of weapons are about $2 a round. So we're already talking about how did this no job, no credit kid obtain somewhere around what, $8,000, walk into a store and walk out with this kind of weaponry. That's fine. Where do you get the money? Now the question is, if somebody gave him the money to do this, then he didn't act alone. It was a plot. And if that wasn't the case, then where he get that kind of cash? See, that's the real question. Now, as far as the police procedures are, the years you guys showed up fairly quickly, but no one breached. No one breached. They're all saying that we're following protocol, which is one of the reasons why I bring that up, because that's what they do. There's a protocol. They're all following protocol. OODA loop says OODA loop is an acronym that law enforcement and shooters and guys who train shooting use it as an acronym. It's observe, orient, decide, and act, and then do it again. Okay? So, because the situation is always changing. So the situation is like a flowing river, right? The situation might have been this 2 minutes ago, but it's a different situation 2 minutes later. So you have to always, observe and orientate and act. So whatever they did there, there's nothing I can analyze for 90 minutes standing outside, hearing the kind of shooting that was going on, and the screams and cries of children you can hear in earshot, and not to mention 911 calls to dispatchers. I got nothing for that. So that's for another tale. That's a tale for another day. Now, however, there were children that were getting out. There were people who were running. There were parents showing up at the place, battling it out with the cops on the scene. In the meantime, the shooter was in there, doing his evil. Now, and then later on, we heard about off-duty parent who happened to be a off-duty Border Patrol officer was getting a haircut. Obviously, maybe he didn't have his firearm with him because he got a firearm or shotgun from the barber shop he was in, which tells me another story. I mean, what kind of place is this where the barber has to have a shotgun in the shop? Okay, so. And luckily that he did, and this guy acted, he went in, and whatever the story becomes, the narrative becomes a little vague, but he went in, rescued his wife, daughter, others, got others out, and dispatched. Maybe he dispatched Ramos dispatched himself, but don't know who did. But it took his one action to turn around and force the situation to happen. So the question now, right, where was the leadership? Where was the leadership? Even if in the absence of leadership, then you step up and become the leader. So just because no one can say, well, there was no leader. If there's no leader, then you're the leader. You're the leader. You lead.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. Thank you very much for that. That was really wonderful and thought provoking. A couple of statements that were made was made here on the chat. One was I did think about one of the preventions when a person had indicated using the fire alarm in the sprinkler system to kind of slow the person down, if that was possible. The other one was, I think me and you, or we discussed a little earlier about if you don't arm the teachers, but you can have enough off-duty police or those people in there who could make, better decisions and act more efficiently. And I think one of the other ones was about these policies. Do you think these policies would ever change on the books or in its training or whatever other unspoken?
Wow, that was a lot of information. I didn't see it. I didn't see the original, but just looking at it now, it is wow. I get myself together here. You talked about run, hide, fight. That's the plan that they're kind of working on now, or that they want to implement. But I think it was Sigmund Freud that said there's a 90-second flight or fight instinct in all of us. I was kind of taken aback. And we hear about these shootings and we know about the policy and procedure of hiding in place. But it became surreal for me when he said that you have kids in one room that's being murdered and you can hear the gunshots, pow, 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 pow. And kids in another room that's sitting in place, and that would be an opportune time for them to escape, whether they went out of the window or ran out of the classroom or had some kind of distraction. That just really it was wow, it moved my heart. There was a penetration there. And I think about my grandkids that's in public schools, and to know that that's the procedure, to stay in place, to hide in place, to stay where you are when there's another option. So that's something that my kids and my grandkids are going to be talking about. So if there's anyone else that have comments, please raise your hand, unmute yourself, show your face. We'd like to hear what you have to say as well. Franklin, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Alexander, for doing this and presenting this, and Nadia and everybody. Yeah, yeah, it's pretty disturbing. I remember when this happened, and I mean that 90 seconds, that shooter had all that time to create this miserable situation. And I'm just thinking how all of us are connected. We're all brothers and sisters. And it's a sobering reminder that, we really need each other, and that, and it shows the importance and the value of the family. Because I don't know those children, I don't know those families who went through that situation. But only thing I do know is that I have a lot of sympathy for them, because as much as I have children and grandchildren, I'm just thinking that if they should come into that situation where they're threatened, their lives are threatened, I can only imagine how much pain it would cause me in my worry. And so the one thing that he also brought up is that if that was a fire, it would be natural. Everybody would be scattered. But he showed how that was an unworkable strategy in light. If you would not just sit still in the fire, why should you sit still, when there is a shooter who is going through the same type of uh, um, motions of creating the same type of disaster that can come to you. So he exposed I guess you can say, a policy that is not completely appropriate to address the needs of that situation. So I'm just thinking that love needs to be incorporated in order to be able to address all of those liabilities that are in question, that played a hindrance on creating the cohesive collaboration that would have resulted in the minimizing of that tragedy. And so that is something which is so necessary for us to be able to have these adult conversations, which are necessary in order to be able to address a possibility of letting go some of the liabilities that actually, I guess you can say, promoted that or played a role in maximizing that tragedy. And so parents, unity with police, maybe it can be a case to have teachers who are open to the possibility of developing their own SWAT team or be armed with guns so that they can be in a better position to be able to learn the type of role that they can play in order to minimize this type of tragedy. And at the same time, yeah, it's a lot of things to think about, and I hope little by little that with God's with prayer and that we can create the environment to have really constructive conversations on how to be able to minimize these type of circumstances of occurring again. So that's some of the things that come to my mind as upon hearing that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Reverend Franklin, excuse me, Reverend
Mhm.
Franklin, for sharing your thoughts. And it reminds me there's a tagline that I like. It says learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I think in this situation, it's time, because he made it very clear that the teachers have been conditioned, the brain has been trained, to sit in place. And these shootings are happening more regularly, more often than we've ever heard of before. Another thing he said, where did this kid get the finances? And if he didn't have the money, whoever gave him the money, then he have an accomplice. So these when we talk about these guns being on the street, where are these guns coming from? We talk about this young boy, $8,000. Where did he possibly get $8,000 from? No credit cards, no money. How did that actually take place? And I think that's something that we have to take a look at as well. We know who's holding the guns, but who's behind the scenes? And I think until they get a grip on and want to go after the suppliers then we'll always have this problem. But as we are as we're speaking to, different people that are, as Reverend Oliver says, have their boots on the ground, and as they're getting more information, and we're no longer operating in silos, but we're all coming together and sharing information, I believe that the situation can be turned around and things will get better. You talked about love and values of the family. The 14-year-old that was involved in the shooting earlier, the latter part of last week. During that whole process, his father said he knew it was a problem, but he didn't know what the problem was. Well, if you knew it was a problem, why not address the problem and get this kid some mental health help, and try to work with him rather than putting a gun in his hand and allowing him access. So it's so many things that happen and are set up to happen. But if we would just take a step back and really evaluate things and think things through, then a lot of this would not happen. Is it someone else that would like to make a comment or have some concerns?
Yes, I have one question. Is there any examples of this stay-in-place policy being challenged within a PTA meeting? And any record of that, and what was the outcome of it, if there was?
Now, what he mentioned was they're still working on the policy itself, but it would take the parents to actually bring this forth. Now, in order for the parents to bring it forth, the parents have to have the information as well. I don't know how he's conversating with school or school administration or with families or neighborhoods or however, but that would be something that as he move forward, and he sounds like he doesn't really want to make the suggestion because of the liability. But if he continues to talk about it, the parents will get a whiff of it and be able to make that decision to say, okay, if my child had been able to go out of the window rather than sitting in place, that would have saved their lives. So even as we're having the conversation on the webinar, even now, it's a conversation that I'm going to have with my children about their children, because that is the policy, to sit in place, to stay in place, to hide. But as he made it very clear, if you hear the shooting and it's a ways off, you have an opportunity, if there's an exit, to get to that opportunity to take that chance. We know when you are operating in adrenaline, even an older person, they said the young person could run so many yards in so many seconds, but even as an older person, if your adrenaline is flowing, you gain strength and you gain speed and you can get out of the way. Oh my God. So we have to do our due diligence in sharing this type of information with our family members. And as we share it with our family members, they'll share it with friends, you know what I mean? And so on and so forth, to get this out, to be able to challenge that policy and procedure. Because it's like I say, it's happening more frequently like we have never seen before. And you take that 14-year-old young man, what was actually on his mind? Was he a sociopath at 14? Were these the things that his father saw in him? However, his father being in denial, and not getting him the mental health help that he needed. So it's so many different processes that go along with this, but Reverend Franklin made it very clear: the family values, the family conversations, the love to really want to know what's going on with your child is very important. We have kids that's so involved with social media. We have kids that's being bullied on social media. We have kids that's being bullied at school, and kids that don't think they could talk to their parents end up in very bad situations because of different trust issues. But I'm sure if something was going on at school, something was going home as well. His father said he's seen some things, but he wasn't really sure. He tried to talk to him about it, and his solution was to take him out shooting. That's a heck of a solution when someone is experiencing a mental health episode. But his father was thinking, they were doing something together, they were spending time together, they go out hunting often, and maybe he thought that was a bonding moment and his son will open up about what he was really experiencing. I don't know. But at the end of the day, he strapped himself, he went into that school, and they had, I don't remember what it was called, but they were able to get assistance pretty quickly because they had some type of lay around their neck where they were able to push like a panic button or something. So they were able to get assistance pretty quickly. The help came pretty quickly, and if they did not have that system in place, I'm sure a lot more lives would have been lost. Who's that? McCready? Unmute yourself.
Oh, okay, I think I'm unmuted. Thank you, Dr. Alexander. I apologize, I missed the first 10 minutes, so I'm not completely clear. I noticed that was like a recording from some time ago. And so I just looked it up online. I do use Wikipedia, and the young man had been abused himself. He'd been bullied, I should say, bullied. According to this, had no friends. He worked at a Wendy's and worked there about a year, and he kept to himself. And that's just some of the stuff. The overall purpose of this is to stop the violence. So obviously there's the approach of trying to foresee where this is happening. And actually after this shooting of Uvalde, they actually passed a law, which was the first law passed in 28 years having to do with, gun control or whatever. And I already downloaded that one, but I'm just saying, it's pretty difficult. You'd almost have to have, like you watch these movies where people are trying to break into something, and then there's, like at some facilities that have a guard that's there, and he's got cameras. He's just sitting there monitoring all these cameras. So it's almost like every school would have to have that. I did notice that as he basically shot his grandma, stole her Ford truck, loaded up his, after he loaded up his ammo stuff, drove and broke through some fence, some barrier, and then he climbed through a ditch. Meanwhile, somebody on site, a law enforcement person, saw him going to school, and he had a rifle, but he didn't want, this is just like how it goes, he didn't know if he was, what do you call it, cleared to shoot the guy. So he hesitated, and then the kid walked into school. And then all the mayhem broke down, and then there was a bunch of other drop, opportunities where they, didn't go in to get him right away. And I'm just saying, there was also just a school shooting, last week, or was it a few days ago?
Last week.
So it seems like you'd almost have to start investing in the schools to have at least a security person monitoring the grounds or something, some kind of a system. Otherwise, there's not a lot of I appreciate what this program was about, which was don't just do a lockdown, just try to actually get away. Which it all depends. If you're on the first floor, that's easier said, easier done, right? But I just wanted to share that. I appreciate the program. It is a very our normal moderator says, it isn't the gun, it's the person behind the gun. Excuse me, Dr. Oliver. So I guess we're just working all this stuff through. Thank you.
Yeah, and to be able to have this webinar and have the conversations to bring us to a higher level of consciousness, and to be able to share information that we receive on this webinar until we can get together and really talk about, best practices and how to execute those best practices. We know that knowledge is power, but if knowledge is not applied, it's just like the gun, the inanimate object that's laying on the table. It takes the people to come together and really place what's important, which are our children, which are our families, which are our communities, and so on and so forth. And until people begin to love people over power, this vein will continue. However, like I said earlier, we're in a process where we've learned. I'm 65 years old. Yes, there's a lot of things that I've learned, but there's some things that I had to unlearn and relearn and able to move forward. So during this process and this time, as we receive information, we can share the information and allow others to make a choice to unlearn and relearn, because they have learned and received information that's no longer applicable. He made it very clear. Mr. Mealy made it very clear. They have been conditioned and the brain has been trained in this one vein, and that one vein is no longer working. So now that we have the information, we have the responsibility to share that information. And as parents have young children, and as they receive the information, it is a topic that they can bring up in the PTA meetings and school meetings and in neighborhoods, and different things. But another thing that I want to be clear on is children's mental health. Children's mental health is important. Adult mental health is important. Psychological evaluations, are important. Self-assessments as adults are important, and how we handle ourselves and how we do things. If your grandchild start acting a little differently, start isolating, talk to them, see what's going on with them, ask them how they feel, ask them, how they did during the day. I have one grandson. It doesn't matter when I call him, whether I'll call him day, night, whether I'll call him during the school week, whether I'll call him on the weekend. I'll say, how are you? How was your day? He says, good. So I have a responsibility to find out what does good mean. To have those conversations and let him know that he's in a safe place to be able to share. Bullying is at another all-time high. Social media is not helping at all. So we want to be mindful of our grandchildren, and for you that might have young children, you want to be mindful and check in with them often to ask, how are you feeling? What are you doing? And what's going on? And provide that safe place that they're able to share. I often say that we live in a society now where, nobody wants to be emotional. You don't let anyone push your buttons. You don't react, you respond. You know what I mean? And all that does is push down emotions and don't allow a person the freedom to actually express what they're feeling. And then you have misplaced aggression. You have boiling pots that the steam is easing out, and then that one day you have that ultimate explosion. So like I said, the hour is upon us. I want to invite anyone else, if they have something to say, if they have something they want to contribute, don't sit in silence. Share your thoughts. Reverend Alexander, we'll go to you and then we'll close. I'm sorry, Reverend Franklin.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I mean, you touched on, Dr. Alexander, you touched on a lot of stuff, I mean, in your inspirations and reflections about this whole conversation, because one of the things in which the gentleman said is that, it's up to me. I mean, we heard this in Divine Principle, and we heard this in many other different, I guess you can say, teachings or spiritual teachings. The solution lies within each and every one of us. We have that ability to harness the God that lies within us and ask God in order that we can create the atmosphere of heart and love to be able to have those conversations, those adult conversations that's going to help us to be able to unearth the cause, unearth the motivation behind all these circumstances. And another thing too that you said was very, very interesting too about the consciousness. See, if children of God, if we are unable to process these tragedies in a principled perspective, that will have an effect on our consciousness as a nation. And that is something that we have to protect, because if we allow ourselves to continue to dwell in a, I guess you can say, in a fearful, conscious state of being, or this inhibits our capacity as a nation, as a society, as a civilization, to become aware of the conscious level that will lead us towards the healing, the awareness that will lead us towards the trajectory of healing. And it was a Power versus Force is a very, very good book I read a long time ago, and I forgot the man's name, the doctor who made this book. He speaks about that. America, because of the social media, the news, we're so bombarded with negative images that affects our consciousness as a society. Yes. But if we have the capacity to let go of that negative, heavy, conscious state of being and presence, we can get to that place where we can naturally let go of our cell phones and have real, genuine communication that will lead us towards us being God to each other. And so that's some of the things that came to me upon some of the inspirations from your sharing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Reverend Franklin. It's our time. We're going to come to a close, but we have to be aware also that this is spiritual warfare, that the enemy is after our souls and after our babies. So as we continue to pray and as we continue to fight in the spirit, we also have to fight in the realm, realizing that we're in this world, but we're not of this world. So we might have a greater responsibility. So thank you, Nadia. Thank you, EJ, for your thank you, Andrea. She says, amen. And y'all know that I'm going to always take you to church. Because we it's as we go through life and we are on this journey, there's so many challenges that we'll be faced with. We have to stand with one another and love one another enough to respect each other's perspective, as Mr. Milley said, and to be able to come together and collectively and not operate in our silos, but able to move forward to support one another and again, get this information out to our families, out to our community, states, cities, and states, around the world, that we'll be able to actually stop the violence. I was in Dubai on last week, and they have a bare minimal of crime.
Yeah.
It's minimal. You know what I mean? And the whole atmosphere is different. How people greet you, is different. But I wish I could bottle it up and bring some of it back to the States, but I didn't figure that out in the 8 days that I was there. But we'll continue praying. Prayer is powerful, and sometimes it's just God help me, So as we move forward, we want to keep our host with the most, Reverend Oliver, in prayer that he has a safe return back to the States. And for all of you, I wish grace and peace upon you. And until we meet again, God bless.
God bless you. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nadia.
God bless you. Thank you.
Good to see you, Wayne.
Good to see you. Yeah, Daryl. Thank you.
Yes. Yes.
MC, thank you for bringing this on.
Yes, absolutely. Wonderful.
Powerful.
We'll try and get some more information, follow-up information on this. I know he did appear the following week 2 years ago, but I didn't have the chance to do the research to find out if anything has progressed or what improvements they've affected. So can imagine it's case by case because of the buildings, because of the locality and all that kind of stuff. So.
Yes. But we know that that word of mouth is the best advertisement.
Yes.
So each one reach one. And as we continue to share, we will make a difference.
Yes.
Amen. Absolutely.
Amen.
Okay, see you next week. We have a wonderful speaker next week.
All right. See you next week. God bless.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.
Yes. Stay safe.
Adios.
Yeah. Have a great weekend. All right. You too, John.